Hey guys, welcome to episode 1, 2, 3 of a playlist on the fake Fender Les Paul, a scabbed together guitar that you can completely waste your life to figure out how we miraculously Frankensteined everything together to get to this point. Again, the playlist is up here. This time we are going to take the mock-up. That's not mock-up like mark-up in New York. It is a mock-up. And get all the tape off, get the stuff mounted, and we will put the junk that I'm known for to individualize this on here, and by the end of it, it will be playable to one extent or another, which will affect its marketability to one extent or the other. Now let's get to the bench where I will do some amount of work to one extent or another. I can't believe you're still watching this. Bless you, my son or daughter, whatever you are. Just keep watching my channel. I really, really need that $13.12 a month. All right, guys, let's catch up. There's been a lot going on here since I talked to you last. All the tape has come off. All the lines were in where they needed to be so we could get the tremolo and the bridge bass and all that. A lot of holes, a lot of putty, a lot of mess with this, and the intonation points are critical. But we're at a point right now where we need to make sure the epoxy is okay and everything is clean. I think the biggest thing we're going to worry about here is that the tremolo is mounted solid and that can free its movement when it's going back and forth. Let's grab this because there's so much moving here, and if one thing is binding one way or another, it will not return to its position, and it will make you think that your guitar can't be in tune. And second behind that is this idea that this bridge bass can be just anywhere we put it. Yeah, that's a hard lesson to learn. Just like when you're going to put any kind of a neck on a body that it was not intended to be, you have to watch the intonation points. And I learned from Fred that you don't come at this measuring things out with a 16 penny nail when you can use a little tip of something like a very fine pen to get your intonation point set up. But I'm cleaning this off. I have drilled all the holes I'm going to need to put in these KP big mouth humbuckers. I've got a piece of putty or Bondo or something here somebody put in, but we have also taken this Cremona sign. I know it says Corona, just go with me, and put that there like that. And we're just going to put all the stuff in order now, and then I have taken the neck and gotten the right screws and have everything, and I have built a spacer for the neck that tilts the angle correctly, and I put these dots on it and it fits in there right. So we're getting to the point where we're actually going to put this all together and find out that it sounds terrible at best. All right, guys, here we go. We are getting everything tightened down. We're going to go across from each other like lug nuts on this vibrato bass. There we go. We'll put on our bridge. Loosen up them strings just a little. This thing is still settling into itself. You can tell. These little pop here and there. There we go, that's settled down. Tighten these up just a tad. These chick flick teal screws are the, I'm not sure what they are. Now once I get this put together here, we're going to let everything settle into itself for a day or two, because there's been a lot of stuff moved around and glued and manipulated. Here we go. Let's blow out a string for the first time. Pow! Oh yeah, we got to do this part. That's the only redeeming part of the whole guitar. There we go. Okay, I have everything up to pitch here on these two strings. What I want to show you is at the 12th fret, we're coming down here, so we're going to do this. And then we're going to do this. And then we're going to do this. And do this. And everything, believe it or not, is okay within just a tad, which means these adjusters for these on the bridge for each string, we can move those forward and back because we were set at midway. So we're going to be able to get this tuned in just right and get it to somebody that knows how to play guitar, because that sure ain't me. Alright guys, we have the neck on this thing, and we've got some wires run through, and it's time to wire it. Imagine that. We're going to do something a little bit different here. We are going to use a Gibson style wiring job here. Of course, a Les Paul, the way Gibsons are wound up, or wired up, excuse me. But I have issues on some things, like I can tell you in sentences stuff that should be written out in a formula, because if I look at something I get all confused and I can't do it. So I could be taking this all apart here and show you, okay, there's a three-way switch, there's two humbuckers, there's a neck and a bridge, and what this does is it allows you to turn this one on by itself, this one on by itself, or both at the same time. Over in this area, we've got a volume and tone control, and we're going to wire this where the neck pickup is here and then the bridge pickup is controlled here. And I can pull all this out and show you. Let me grab another junky guitar over here for a minute. Yeah, this is a good junky guitar. It's cheap. It's got the neck or the headstock broke off of it, And so that means we got to put some first aid. Look at that, isn't that cool? But I could be using this one to show you where the pockets are and where the wiring run is and all of that. And so I just decided we're not going to do it that way. A couple years ago, I made up a couple of things that you can go to Home Depot and get a piece of this. It comes in a sheet, and this is actually a blackboard, and then if you flip it over, it's a whiteboard, so you can use those dry erase markers, or you can use chalk. You could make a sign out of this. You could say Wendy Jean Garrison plays here tonight with the Mississippi mudslide. You can do anything. Oh, by the way, if you've got a chalkboard, what you want to do, if it's never had chalk on it, it's not going to want to stick. So you just lay a piece of chalk on the side. By the way, this is sidewalk chalk. You just go back and forth this way until it's covered, and up and down this way. And then you wipe it off and it will stick. And of course, this is for dry erase markers. Now the thing to this is, you want to make one of these if you're doing arch tops or you're doing Les Pauls or something. You want to remember that if you're fretting up here, this is a right-handed. That means that anything you put on here is actually going to be on the inside. So if I were to put holes in here to do a template, that would mean that when I turn this over, I have to remember that the volume and tone control for the neck pickup is here, and the volume and tone control for the bridge pickup is here. So when I turn this over, the holes would be here, but everything would be backwards and upside down. So you want to remember that. These are good. You can get a piece, a half a sheet, and you can get at least two good, if not two arch tops and a Les Paul out of it. But let's look and see what I have done here. Okay, so we're going to use this tonight, and I'm going to show you how to wire this thing up. And I've done that by taking some dry erase markers in this thing. Look at this. This is one of Tammy's things. It's very cool. In fact, I might have to put all these in this first aid kit here. Anyway, so I want to write on here what's going on and kind of explain the components to you. We're going to have a three-way switch up here. We are going to have, these are just props. We're going to have a bridge pickup. We are going to have a neck pickup. We are going to have, let me see what else I got here. We are going to have a jack. We are going to have a tailpiece. We're going to have a bridge. Now I want to show you something here. When I flip this over and we start wiring things, I'm going to kind of show you where everything goes, and I'm going to use chalk to do it. But one of the first things we have to understand is, if this is a floating bridge, and I've got one right here, this is wood, okay? So I need to ground the strings. I can't do that with a wooden bridge. Now, if I have a bridge, a tunematic on studs, and I drill a hole down through for the studs, I can take a wire and run it through a side hole in the studs that goes into the cavity that's underneath here, and I can ground my strings that way. if I am going to have a tailpiece with a floating bridge like so, then these holes that go in the side of the body at the end are going to give me access where I can drill a hole in this way and run a wire from the tailpiece, which will attach to the strings, and then I can run that wire around one of these and my strings will be grounded that way. I always like to use these kinds of jacks. They're tough. I put metal around there. There is a hot wire, which is a small one, and a ground wire, so those will be there. So I think that's kind of ballparky. Let me clear this stuff off of here and talk to you about some of the things you will need. Okay, we'll use this for a table. So the first thing is you need a good soldering iron. When you start getting around 25 or 30 watts, they just don't work out. You want something that's going to get hot and it's going to do your soldering quick and not take a while to cool off or heat up. If you get cold solder joints, that ain't going to work out. So Weller makes one. A lot of different people make one. This one's got a holder in the top. It plugs in. It's got a longer cord, and you can turn it on and set the different stuff you want. Now, you're going to want a file around. You're going to want a piece of sandpaper around where you can keep this tip clean. And then while you're soldering, you want this piece of sponge right here that's wet, and you can just put it on there. But keep this thing stable. If you shop around for one of these, sometimes the wholesalers show up on Facebook Marketplace. You can get them for 50 bucks, 65 bucks or whatever. The old Wellers that are in that green configuration with the, those are nice too. But so you got that, you've got this, and then the solder, you want rosin core solder. I don't like the big giant stuff. I like this. It's small. You can get in there and do whatever you need to do. When it comes to wire, you're going to find that sometimes you want a stiff piece of wire, and I'll show you the application for that. But what I use is this pushback wire in different colors. And it's called pushback wire because you can basically get the end of it and you just push it back like this. It's pre-tinned. Now if I'm going to wrap that ground wire that's coming off my tailpiece around a screw hole, I can pull this back and wrap it around a couple times. But the way this is, if I want to put it on a potentiometer, I can just bend the end of it a little bit and just touch it on there, and then I can push this all the way back up, and it acts like shrink wrap. I am a big fan of shrink wrap. You saw some pictures on my Instagram channel, CDLS Dads, where Tammy and I used to sit around and cut these up and have this ready in different configurations. Stuff for a loom, where you got 3 or 4 wires coming together, and of course the smaller stuff. When you're doing pots, if you put this on and make your connection, none of the lugs will ever touch each other. So shrink wrap is a good thing. Of course, you'll need your components. I don't buy the cheapest and smallest components, but you got a set of pots. They long shaft, shorter, intermediate shaft. I keep some of this copper tape around. Get this from a horticultural supply. They use it to keep slugs and snails out of the garden. It's cheap that way. When you buy from a guitar supplier, it's a little bit more expensive. I got these capacitors. Now I want to tell you something about these things. When you're putting them on and you're soldering them and your heat gun is fired up, let me make sure I got what I'm looking for here, and your heat gun is fired up, your soldering iron, and you stay on this a little bit too long, the heat will follow this up and burn this out or affect how it works. it might appear to be half dead. So you want to take an alligator clip, have a good selection of those around, and you clip it on between where you're soldering and this, and it will help protect that. A few of these around is good because you can test things outside the guitar, three-way switches, pickups, etc. What am I missing here? Again, I like these types of jacks. There's nothing worse than the other jacks that they just come apart. It goes inside the neck. I mean, everybody should do that. But I put these on, usually a piece of license plate behind it or something to reinforce it. But that's kind of the stuff. I also use piezos quite a bit, so I might have a single pickup up here that's a humbucker, and then have something like this under the bridge, and that's all just kind of some basic stuff. Let's take a look at wiring a Les Paul type guitar. Okay, again, let's take a quick look at what this would look like on the top of the guitar. It's got a single cutaway. It has a three-way switch. It is in a hole in the top, and it has its own body cavity. For that, you're going to have a humbucker on the neck position. You're going to have a humbucker on the bridge position. This one is going to have a tunematic bridge that goes into studs, and then you are going to have a tailpiece that sits back here. And you've seen the guitar, but the setup here with the vibrato is a little bit different, but this is kind of what it looks like. Without a vibrato, that tailpiece would be studded into here somewhere where these were, and you can tell how the old guitar was set up. It had a different neck, so the intonation point was different on the bridge, and then your stud mounted tailpiece was there. So it kind of looks like this, so keep that in the back of your mind. So let's put this stuff off to the side here and get that all out of the way, and then we can turn this over and get to thinking about what this looks like. So I've put the three-way switch in. There's no way I would wire the pickups here or run a wire to the strings that would go to the tunematic bridge here. I guess it could go to the vibrato. I didn't do it that way. But we're going to have a jack, and this is supposed to represent the ground wire that runs from the pots to wherever the strings are grounded. So as we flip this over, remember, right-handed guitar, neck, pickup, volume, tone, bridge pickup, volume, and tone. So when we flip this over, it's no surprise that there are potentiometers there already. These are born potentiometers. I don't use the cheapest ones I can get. The three-way switch is up here. Okay, I'm going to turn these in a way that allows me to get to them to do the work. Now you want to remember, I'm going to be going back and forth here. The cavity on this stuff is pretty small. I could line that with that copper foil, or there's some paint you can use that kind of shields everything. That's an okay thing. Same as up here. Now, we want to remember that the channel that feeds the wire is starting up here. It goes through the pickup cavities and ends down here. I drilled a hole right there for the wire that goes up to the stud on the tunematic, but underneath here, the channel comes in here, it goes to here, and then it exits here. And in some guitars, it's not really big, so remember that. And you got to kind of work yourself out of it backwards to plan what's coming next. So let's get to the wiring here. let's forget about the three-way switch. That's where people get in trouble. But the first thing I want to tell you is that we are not going to worry about the ground wire coming off the bridge that grounds the strings. But we're going to talk about this a minute. This jack has a ground and a hot wire, so remember that. The first thing we want to do is ground the potentiometers. So we're going to take short pieces of wire. I would use black, and I would take a look at these and see. Some people use guitar strings or hard wire to run between these. You want to make sure that these will fit in when you're done. You also want to remember that these are going to turn. So if I'm going to put these together and run stuff like a capacitor between them or something like that, I'm going to want to plan that ahead and make sure that these are going to fit in my pot cavity in the body. But so when I say ground them together, we're talking about short runs of wire that are soldered here and here and then here. Now I could run one to each, but it's really important that these are grounded. So I'm going to draw this out for you so you can screenshot it instead of watching all kinds of a wire mess. But this is going to be my color for grounding. So I'm going to go from here to there. That's showing up good. And then from here to here. And then from here to here. I'm going to want to do that one on the inside because we don't want a lot of stuff out here. So again, I could go from here to here, whatever. But that is your grounding, your overall grounding when it comes to the potentiometers. Now, we know that somewhere back here is the jack, okay? And it has a ground. Now, some people say, okay, well, this is going to go up to the three-way switch up here, so let's just run two wires and ground it to the three-way switch. No, don't do that. What I need you to do is run a ground wire. Remember, there's going to be a little channel here and an opening for your jack, and it won't look like this, so I have to modify it, but whatever. I am going to make sure that one of these pots that's grounded already is going to come to a wire where my jack is going to be. You want to make sure that there's enough slack on that where you can pull it out, unhook it if you need to, and you're going to want to make sure that you pay attention to how it all goes together so you don't paint yourself in a corner. But, so you see that? We've got, this is grounded. There's a three-way switch here. It's got a lug here, one here, and then two that touch in the middle. Those two that touch in the middle, one of them is attached to this outside one and this outside one here. Now, what we want to pay attention to is this big thick one running to the back of the switch. That is a ground, okay? And so, we got a couple choices to make here. We can run, because this is a ground, okay? We can run one wire up to here that's a ground wire. And that needs to go from back here to one of the pots over here. Now remember, these wires represent the fact that you would actually solder to the back of the potentiometer where there's one of these and extend a wire there. So it would look like this. You see that? But that ground wire is also going to have to come down and be part of the wires that are going to attach to here. So, let's get rid of the three-way switch first. One of these goes to the neck pickup, and we're going to turn this around. This needs to ground to itself. So we can take a short piece of wire and solder it there like that, between that, or some people bend this lower lug here. So if you're looking at this, imagine that this is up, and so this one is number 1, this is 2, this is 3, whatever you want to do. But when you turn these around, remember, they're the opposite. So here's the deal. One of these outer lugs needs to come to the center lug of the volume pot. Now, of course, this is the bridge pickup. Remember, we turn it over. So I'm going to get a different color of chalk here. Let's say that we want the outer lug here to be to come from the 3-way switch to the bridge pickup pot. So we're going to go from here, which is the outer lug here, and I'm going to draw this line here, and we're going to put this to that center lug right there. Remember, we've bent this over and soldered it into itself. Okay? Now, we're going to go to the other outside lug, and we're going to run that to the center lug on the neck pot. So it looks like this. Outside lug comes around, goes to the center lug. Okay? Now you're going to say, what about that middle where the two come together? We need another piece of chalk. You will remember that on the jack back here, we grounded the jack, which is the big lug. The small lug is the hot lug. That's sitting here like this. We are going to run a wire that goes from that big hot lug all the way up through the harness, like so. And we are going to put it on that center lug where both of them come together. Do you see that? Yeah. There are one on the outside, one on the inside, and then the two attached in the middle. So our input jack, hot lead, goes to the center lug of the 3-way switch. The outside one of them goes to the center lug of one of the tone or volume pots. The other one goes to the center of the other pot. Now, when our pickups come into the picture, let me grab one here. There are 2 wires here. One of them is on the outside. It's braided. This is a ground wire. This is the hot wire right here. Now, when you strip this back, there's all kinds of strands here. And if one of these strands, even the tiniest, thinnest one, is touching anything hot, it will ground out your pickup. But what ends up happening with these is the hot wire of your neck pickup is going to attach to this lug, the top lug pointed this way, and the other braided wire is going to come in and attach to the ground wire that you have run in. And the best time to put that ground wire coming from here, back here, to these other wires is right here while you're putting this one on. Now, remember, the ground wire that's here in the back is running to your input jack. and the hot wire is plugged to the middle, but these other ones have a wire too, and they are not grounded. Okay? So typically what you would do is you would use a 2-strand wire up here to make sure that these get connected and grounded here. Okay? So 2-strand, meaning you would typically use something like this for each one of these wires, the outside, both outside ones, and then ground them to that back lug that's grounded to everything down here. There are a number of ways to do that. I'll have you figure it out. But the other pickup then, the bridge pickup, would go same thing, top lug here, hot wire, grounded. So hot wire here goes to pickup, hot wire here goes to pickup, and we will put a bridge and a neck there. With me? One more time. Ground the pots together. From the pot, run a wire to the ground on your jack. Make sure all those are grounded. Run the hot wire all the way up to the center lug on the 3-way switch. Run a wire from the outside lug of each of these up here to the center lug of your volume pot. Same thing for over here. And then wire your neck and bridge hot one to the top one of each of these. That takes care of your volume setup with one thing missing. Remember that wire that's going to your bridge or from your tailpiece? That one's got to come over and jump into your ground wire system. Okay, my friend the Cricket has joined us. So that's all done. Now at this point, you probably want to turn this around, and of course you would have thought about all the grounding wires that run between here. So you just turn this around like so. Now, you need to ground the pots to themselves, and that means you take this center lug and you run a piece of wire from here to the back and tie it into your grounding spot there. Then you take your capacitor. You go from the center lug. Yeah, that's right. That's the one that came in from the 3-way switch up there. And you are going to run the capacitor between the center lug here. You see that? It's easy to bend these and figure out how much space is between it. It's handy to have that. You see that? But I'm going to go from the center lug where the wire came in from the switch. It's either the outside, one outside, or one outside up there. And again, center lug here pointed this way grounds into itself just like these did back here. And then I'm going to run it to the bottom lug here, like so. Now, I can take a piece of wire like this and make that stiff between there and hook the capacitor here or do whatever I want to do. But remember, this is where you are going to want to use a heat sink, meaning the heat will go to there before it hits that. And you do the same thing right over here. So one more time. Put your pots in. Know which way they're going to turn. Don't solder stuff and then turn it all around and get the joints loose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, this is upside down. So I like the bridge pickup to be down here when I'm accessing the controls. The neck pickup up on top, which is here. Ground all those together. Ground the input jack. Run a wire from the hot of the input jack all the way up to the center lug of the three-way switch. Run a wire that's both a ground and a hot wire to each of the outsides on the three-way switch. Bring that down, hook it in to the center of each of the volume pots. Run a ground wire in the loop down to here, ground it into here. The ground wire for each of these wires will need to be grounded in. Take your pickup hot wires, put them on the top lug here, one here, one here. Use the ground from the pickups onto the back, and you are done. Done. I know this looks like a mess. Slow it down. Look at this, and then you will be fine. This is a vintage 50s type Les Paul wiring model. All right, guys, I don't know if that helped you or if it did not, but typically one of my problems early on is I would wire the jack, the input jack, hot wire and ground right to the three-way switch, and that would lead to some problems on the signal coming out and telling the guitar which pickup to play or both. Also, these switches, the cheaper they are, the worse they work. So they're Switchcraft switches. Just try to match your stuff up. If you're going to put out the cheapest stuff on the cheapest guitars, then adjust your price point and tell your people, you know, this is a good guitar for a kid to start off with. Or in this case, this is a mess of a terrible body that was picked up in some parts collection that I think somebody sold just to get rid of their husband's stuff. It's got a great neck on it. It's got good parts, and I'm happy about the way it's going to be wired up. It's going to be playable. It's going to be some token something or other. So I'm going to go ahead and wire this up and get it to where it sounds okay. I don't think any of you real guitar players are going to be impressed with this thing being some virtuoso something or other, but I'll get some footage in the future. Somebody can play it and play it well, and we'll bring it back to you then. Next time we're going to move on to some other project. I got a ton of footage put together, and I will see you then.